Despite being a relatively niche genre, the number of racing games available can be quite overwhelming at times. Some games focus on aesthetics, customization, car choice, etc., while others more on the driving mechanics. Then there's the Mario Karts, just casual multiplayer fun with no real depth. Within the broad spectrum, Grid Autosport lies somewhat between the simulation end of the genre. Hardcore fans of Assetto Corsa or R-Factor would like an Autosport F1 race stars, but Need for Speed players would draw comparisons to Forza Motorsport. The first question you need to ask yourself before considering this game is whether you like racing. Do you play racing games for the actual gameplay or for the metagame stuff such as customization, graphics, progression, etc.? Because if you're just after the game where you have hundreds of cars that you can graffiti and upgrade, tune a Fiat Punto to beat a Bugatti Veyron on a drag race, then Grid Autosport is definitely not for you. Let's begin with the most important aspect of the game, the one Codemasters pride themselves on after a decade of trial and error. After the fan feedback from Grid 2, the driving is definitely far more serious. You drive around the track, not drift it. This is a game which emphasises precision and rewards perfectly timed braking and turning. The handling depends on your car choice and all cars behave the way you would expect. Open wheelers grip the road at high speeds and spin out at low speeds, while supercars require far more careful throttle control. The most commonly frustrating problem with some simulation style racing games is that they tend to understeer or oversteer much more than you would intuitively expect. But in Autosport you can definitely feel the car. You know exactly how much grip you have and how the car will handle, brake, turn, etc. the moment you start driving it. The weightiness of the cars makes you sense the speed you are doing, which helps keep the racing exciting. Unlike the one-fits-all approach of Grid 2, Autosport instead offers assists. There are standard stuff you would expect from a game like this: automatic transmission, anti-lock brakes, traction control, stability management, racing line, and even turning and braking assists. And of course, that's not forgetting the fastest and best rewind system known as flashbacks. Thankfully, the game rewards those that race with less assists. You will be able to obtain faster lap times using manual gears and all assists off, although ABS might be useful for some drivers. If you're the full throttle or no throttle kind of person or a keyboard user, traction control makes a big difference to the experience. Instead of spinning out all the time, you would be able to drive normally, albeit at the cost of being slower than someone who knows how to play the game properly. Driving can be summarised as accommodating, fair, well balanced and realistic enough to be intuitive, but not a simulation so to be too boring and frustrating. Outside of races, there isn't a great deal of ways in which you can gain an unfair advantage. You can apply a maximum of 5 upgrades to a car, each for different components, for example, weight, engine, clutch, etc. They are either on or off. You can also tune your car, and unlike many games which implement this feature, Autosport does not require you to be a mechanic to make sense of this. 1 or 2 short sentences describe the part you're tuning, and all you get is a slider. It's not like Forza or the original Dirt where you can adjust the camber of individual wheels by a minuscule amount or adjust the torque or RPM ratios of individual gears. No, this is very easy to use and takes seconds to tune a car how you want it just before a race. As I said, this game is all about the driving, not the menus. So setting up the car before a race is simple and quick. The actual on-track difference is noticeable, but often it's a matter of preference rather than necessity. A good driver with a suboptimal setup will not find it impossible to beat a novice with ideal value. The cars and tracks in the game are generally well chosen and offer decent variety. There are 5 main disciplines in Grid Autosport. Touring, consisting of touring cars used on race circuits for race and time attack. Endurance racing is where your finish position is decided when the time runs out and is always at night. Open wheel, using lightweight formula cars and is perhaps the most fast-paced experience. Tuner, using Japanese imports like Nissan Skyline R34 and the Honda NSX, as well as American muscle cars in mostly time attack events as well as drifting. Street is all about street racing in places like Chicago, San Francisco and Paris using road legal cars. There's something here for everyone, although the street discipline is likely to be the most popular as it has all of the fancy cars you'd expect from a Need for Speed game, and indeed features much crashing due to the narrow roads and high-speed cars. There is also a party mode where no upgrades and tuning is allowed and any car track combination can be chosen. Within this mode there is also the classic checkpoint and eliminator events as well as demolition derby. Perhaps this was included because, well, it's bound to be more useful here than in Dirt Showdown. The tracks in this game are pretty decent, but there's nowhere near the number that there is in something like Shift 2 Unleashed. Furthermore, all tracks, be it street circuits or real-world tracks, are circuit races, so there are no point-to-point races like there were in Grid 2. The variety of cars and tracks is generally decent enough, although don't expect anything radically different like off-roading or exotic event types. A note on the drifting. It is the best drifting ever to exist in a video game. The handling is so perfect and satisfying, and the fact that there are dedicated tracks and drift zones make it fun and not boring. Instead of giving you a random bit of road and scoring on how much time you spend from start to finish sideways, this system only scores you on how well you drift each section. This is of course based on how sexy you can make it look and how close you can get to the markers without hitting them. If you do spin out or go off track or hit a marker, you don't lose all the points you've earned. Anything you've gained you keep regardless. However, it will stop you from gaining any more points from that section and reduce your flow meter, another factor which determines your score. It is fair, it is fun, and it is fast, and it removes all of the nonsense drifting on straights to get the points. This is proper drifting at its best. The career mode is very simple and focused on racing. It tries to make out that racing for different teams actually matter, but in reality it's so weakly developed that it might as well just be a list of events without the team's names and annoying announcer. The XP system and levelling up in the career and which team you race for means diddly squat. There's no loyalty points or any incentive to give a shit. You don't actually own any cars, so you can't do anything other than simply race. The only difference your choice of team makes is what car and livery you get. This is fine, but if you're going to put so little effort in, at least try to cover it up a little better, or you could just not bother with it at all. In terms of offline content, there is time trial which has been patched in, where you can choose any car, track combo and try to improve your leaderboard position. There is also split screen racing as well as custom cup, where you can change all settings for the race and play against the AI. As with Grid 2, the real progression is in the online. Thankfully, however, there is no need to grind out the levels to be able to even compete because you don't have any cars. All cars are accessible right from the start. You can choose to buy any of them provided that you have the cash. However, due to the limitations of garage slots, you unlock additional slots by leveling up, and the fact there are so many categories for cars within each discipline, there's very little gain from actually owning a car. You can use a car whether you own it or not, but you don't level it up if you loan it, so you can't unlock upgrades and tuning for it. That said, owning a car requires you to repair it, so that incurs upkeep costs, but gain XP from having a higher level car and don't pay the loaner fee. A basic but surprisingly powerful livery customization system is in place, so you can tailor the paint job to your tastes for your own car. You also add sponsor labels which reward you for cash for completing certain objectives, but all of these are optional, to be honest. I have a level 99 Ford Focus ST, the highest level, and despite having access to all of the upgrades and highest level of tuning, I can't win with it. All that matters in this game is your skill, not your inventory. The lobby system is pretty much standard as in all racing games, but lacks text chat. You can set up custom racing or play the standard disciplines. The netcode is generally good and the amount of bashing is not as excessive as it was in Grid 2. The races are relatively fair compared to a lot of racing games. Most people tend to have a clean race mentality, or at least that's the intention. My favourite thing about the online is that you don't need to play against other people to enjoy it. The weekly RaceNet challenges offer 6 races that give you a car category, a track and a set of targets for bronze, silver, gold and platinum. You of course gain cash and XP for doing these, but at the end of the weekly challenge, the bonus cash you get depends on your performance relative to other players. So if you came in the top 10%, you get a lot more than finishing in the top 90 regardless of your medal. This weekly challenge will keep you going back to the game even if you finish the career, so it's a great feature for most games to have. In terms of quality, Grid Autosport has nailed it. Almost. The game engine offers smooth performance and colourful visual style and all the fancy lighting techniques. Performance-wise, it rarely, if never, suffers from choppy frame rates and looks consistently good both during day and night time. Everything in the options menu that should be there is there, so don't expect hard-coded controls and graphic or sound options. The achievements for the game are also pretty decent and reward you for playing the game as you normally would. There's nothing glitchy or over-grindy except for unlocking one of the team offers in career mode. The AI is okay, nothing great, but my rule is that if you generally don't notice the AI, chances are that they're not pissing you off enough, so that's pretty good. The difficulty setting for the AI is also very good. The only major letdown with this game is the interior view. Given Grid 2's lack of it, this upset many fans that Codemasters were so ignorant of something which many felt was an essential part of a good driving game. Although Autosport promises the return of the cockpit view, it's fucking awful. Everything is blurred out and everything is black. Every car's interior looks the same and there is no moving dials or anything of the sort. It's so insulting, it would have been better if they'd left it out. The dash cam is a bit better and there is of course a bumper cam and bonnet cam, but to advertise it as a selling point of the game is a joke. Almost a deliberate troll attempt. If interior view is something that matters to you, Autosport is disappointing. Overall, Grid Autosport's design philosophy is something to be admired. It has a very specific target audience, gamers that like to race with minimal distractions. Every design decision seems very deliberate and contributes towards its aim of being a racing game which is all about racing. If you are a true racing game fan, you should definitely give this game a go.